Welcome for a special morning episode of Money Never Sleeps. I'm joined here with my friend, Mr. House. We're going to be talking about the CPI data that just released, how the markets are reacting ahead of opening, and we're going to talk a little bit about the XRP ETF. Does it exist? Does it not exist? All that more on today's episode of Money Never Sleeps. Welcome. Appreciate everyone being here this morning. If you guys are catching this on the replay, we appreciate you guys watching. Yeah, man, it's early morning. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for being here to do this CPI data. As soon as it released, I'm going to share my screen right now. We're just going to get right into it. Inflation looks like it's coming down based off of what the Bureau of Labor and Statistics are putting out. This is the economic news release, the consumer price index summary. You can see that across the board, things are coming down, right? You can see all items CPI came in, I believe, at 3.2, under expectations of 3.3. So markets are definitely going to be responding, pretty proactively to that. Also, core CPI was supposed to be coming in at 4.1, comes in at 4.0. Again, it's another win, I guess, for the Fed in that regard. It's really interesting on CPI days how much the markets don't move the day prior, but once the markets, the futures markets starting to move, we see a lot of volatility back and forth. Majority, this has been to the upside, though. If we look at the futures markets, it's really interesting, man. I think everything that happens in August, September definitely are not the issues in the month of October. Oil was not nearly as present of an issue. We can see here energy is down 4.5. We can see that energy commodities down 6.2, gasoline's down 5.3, fuel oil negative 21.4. I mean, it looks like energy, the thing that was killing a lot of the CPI in the months prior, is definitely retracing here. And does this give the Fed, some hope that a soft landing is coming? Maybe, right? It's finally starting to see inflation come down. I have different thoughts. I'm curious to see what you have to say about this data because, it isn't necessarily a bad print.
Yeah, no, I mean the print's fine. If anything, it shows a sign of recovery. But the thing that worries me is even if inflation's going down, I read a stat yesterday, and I'll see if I can find it, send it over to you. But the average American is now $6,000 delinquent on credit card debt, and consumer credit just crossed to like 1.01 trillion, which is an all-time high. So even if things are getting cheaper, if people are defaulting on credit card debt, they might not be able to afford cheap things, right? So it's like it's one of those weird balances of trying to decide internally. Is there just a small basket of people with a lot of credit card debt that's really skewing that number? Or is it just the American public has no savings and is relying on credits?
Absolutely. And I think even from the pandemic itself, everything in terms of price is just absolutely inflated, right? A lot of what caused the inflation, the spike, other than money printing during inflation during the pandemic period, was just supply chain, right? It was harder to get items, it was harder to produce items just because there was more demand than there was supply. Obviously, that's wavered a bit now that everything seems to be back in order. However, goods remain the same price. They never for the most part, things stayed in the same, range. I think consumers definitely are the ones that felt it the most. Again, if you have money, you don't have to necessarily worry about the prices going up, right? If you don't have money and you're, trying to make things work, you're trying to live life normally prior to 2020, not saying that was normal before then, but, you're probably going to lean on those credit cards a little bit more. And as the interest rates continue to go up, if you were leaning on those credit cards, it's going to hurt a lot more, right? So when I look at this, I think, okay, first glance, it's a really good number. Second glance, it's like, okay, core is only down 0.1%. I'm not getting too excited about that. That's nothing to be crazy about. We're still waiting to get that 2% rate that the Fed wants, right? That's when they said that's they're going to be their target goal. The other thing is inflation is a lagging indicator. So with these rates being hiked, we're waiting to see how the economy and how these rates are impacting inflation data and CPI. It's a major lagging indicator. And so a lot of what we're seeing today is actually from roughly 10 to 12 months prior of rate hikes, right? So if it's starting to come down, maybe that's a good thing. But at the same time, it's like we had a lot of rate hikes in between that point too. So we could have over tightened at that point. So there's just a lot of things to keep in mind. One of the other things that really popped out at me was just how shelter was doing down here. You see that shelter is still up 6.7. Transportation's still up a good amount, 9.2. For the most part, everything else is down a good amount, but that shelter number remains sticky. I mean, it's down from the month of the September. It's at zero point 0.3, but total year over year, it's 6.7. And that's really interesting to me because you kind of need a house or an apartment to live. And if those numbers remain high, elevated, well, then, I still think that inflation is going to be more persistent and stickier than most people are anticipating. I mean, even if you look at the goods, the food, zero point 0.3. Food went up just a little bit here. Food away from home, zero point 0.3 as well. Seems like food still sticky. The only thing that kind of helped us out in this inflation reading is energy, right? So when it comes to food and shelter, two things that are really important. Gas and energy, arguably important, but we're just seeing less demand. I think that shows that people aren't as willing to be buying, and I think that's a lot of what's happening with OPEC, Russia, and the Saudis when they're front running some of these oil prices. There's just not that demand for it. So this could be a good number, but it's kind of painting a different picture if we're looking into it from that lens. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say on inflation. I think that's we can move on to other things in the market that are really important, which are futures markets, right? I say that they're not necessarily super important, but they're good enough to the point where we can look at some of the ES, the NQ, and the YM to see how these markets are trading ahead of opening in about 23 minutes. And we can see that on the hourly for the YM, which is the did the wrong thing. There we go. For the Dow mini futures, we could see that as soon as that print came in, markets went straight up, right? We bounced off the 50 moving average in the hourly, and then it just was a massive green candle to the upside, 374 points ahead of market open, 1.80%. If we look at the ES, S&P, we're up 64 points. That's 1.45%. Absolutely gonna. I mean, this just means that the VIX is getting absolutely tanked right now, most likely, right? It just seems like we're just building these gaps to the upside, and that's a dangerous game. I think still. We can see the Nasdaq up 271, 1.74%. We've had a really good couple of weeks, or at least so far, we've had 2 good weeks in this market, right? It just seems like they cannot find any sellers in TradFi. We're having a great bounce, and maybe this is a bear. This was a bull flag, and we're starting to bounce out of it. Right? We talked about that possibility yesterday. Um, I'm really, I mean, I'm not dumbfounded. It's just I'm really surprised by the fact that the market is just buying nonstop. We haven't seen much retracement, and I mean, if we have seen retracement, what is it? Down 0.85% one day and then down 0.32% another day. And then if we look on the weekly, it's like what, 3 weeks of green candles, 6.4%, 2.75%, this week, 1.41%. It's really interesting to see that. I don't know. I think that could be a rally towards the end of the year. It doesn't seem like there's much stopping it at this point. So yeah, I don't know. TradFi markets are definitely in a trend or in a bullish sentiment right now, it seems.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of on the same page as you. I think dumbfounded is, a good word because there seemed to be a lot of looming volatility at the macro that didn't really point towards this coming in my mind. But at the same time, it's like not necessarily the brightest mind in all of economics and finance. So bound to be wrong occasionally myself. But no, I mean, I think it's one of those things where we were almost in this cycle of everyone waiting for bad news for so long. Bad news didn't really come, at least in the form of it tanked the markets. So people are kind of in that phase of I've been sidelined so long. we're kind of in a phase that people are saying, hey, maybe we're rallying, bull could be coming back. So people are trying to place some bets down. But at the same time, like, I still anticipate, whether it's next month or next few months, something potentially negative happening. Just because there has been so much volatility and so many threats looming for past 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting seeing this too, right? I think one thing that keeps screaming at me is just this weekly stochastic RSI. I mean, it needs. It seems like it wants to get to the overbought territory. I don't know when it's going to get there. I would like it sooner than later, obviously, because I'm a bear. But I think that this is going to push up, and if this continues at this pace, it's really interesting to see where it's going to end up. Maybe we get to all-time highs for the Nasdaq. I mean, if we look at the S&P futures, I think we're going to try and aim for that 46.25, which is the height of this move back here in July. So we could take out the July highs, the yearly highs. And then again, if we look at this on the daily, it's overbought completely. If we look at this on the monthly, it just kept coming out from overbought. If we look at this on I mean, those are the only two that really are important. If we look at the weekly, we're still pushing to the upside. So I think that there is an argument to be made here that we need to get this weekly stochastic RSI a little bit higher, and that would kind of just create the perfect scenario for everything to kind of be aiming to the downside, right? We have everything extremely overbought on the daily, the hourly, the weekly, the monthly, and then in that case, by that time, given what's happened here in these markets, I'm just going to pull up the S&P on this chart, we got so many gaps to the downside that there's so much liquidity just sitting there that it would be, just one fall swoop, take everything out, and then we see where we are, because I don't think that's any of the news that we're getting. Inflation might be coming down, but we know unemployment's definitely rising, right? The past 2 months have been insane how many people have been laid off. And as we're going into the holiday season, I've read an article yesterday that they're anticipating between 335,000 and 445,000 seasonal worker jobs being added, which is roughly, I think it's like 60% down from what years prior have been. So it's really interesting to see that, because I think that shows that a lot of retail chains and stores aren't anticipating a great holiday season. And I think, how could you at this point, right? I think credit cards, like you said, are maxed out, they're delinquent. And we've been getting all this data from these company earnings and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, we get the expectations, whether they beat or not, but we don't necessarily get the corporate profits, which are the most important thing. And if they're seeing something that we're not, well, then they're going to adjust accordingly, not to screw themselves over. They'll have enough employees on hand to get through the season, but they won't have as many because they know that they won't be necessarily as profitable. So that's pretty much what I'm seeing with TradFi. I still am bearish as could be, but I do expect that we could see some type of rally into the end of the year. And again, that's a month and a half away before anything would change. But it can't go up forever. Obviously, we need some type of retracement between here and then. I mean, even we're still early. The markets haven't opened yet. I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some type of retracement even in today, right? Maybe half of the gains are cut, a quarter of the gains are cut. Just people are going to have to be taking profits at some point, because if we look at this from where we are currently, we've had roughly from the bottom here to the top, we're up 8.7%. So, I mean, we can't be foolish and think that, hey, that hasn't been a good move. It's been a great move for TradFi. All right. So that's all I had on TradFi and futures markets. Sorry, it's still extremely early. I am watching the Asian markets all night, so I usually wake up a little bit later for the American ones. But yeah, let's take a look at something that's really interesting, I think, and that is XRP, because we saw some wild price action in that yesterday, right? We saw crypto pull back. Some altcoins look like they're bouncing here and there. But let's look at this wild XRP candle that we got yesterday. I'll pull up the hourly. I mean, man, let me know where you guys think the XRP ETF that was announced by that was supposedly a BlackRock filing was proven false. I'm going to let you know it's right here, right there. And it dropped 7.9% on the hourly after pumping 9.15% in the same 2-hour span. Absolutely hilarious. I think it's funny, and I think it also shows you this market doesn't this market is still liquidating people nonstop, and I'm not surprised if we continue to liquidate people through fake news.
No, yeah, I mean it's like I don't want to, clown on or laugh at anyone getting liquidated, but to the same tone, it's honestly kind of funny that we keep getting all of this new ETF filing, ETF approved news. 30 minutes to an hour later, it gets disproven, and then you have a bunch of angry people on Twitter that are like, "I just got liquidated. Who's the source? Who's the source? This is fake. What happened?" And it's like, wait until you actually hear it from a reputable source. The reputable source not being one of the Twitter accounts that's always trying to be first to publish stuff, but then it turns out almost every headline they publish is wrong or excluding massive information. Um, but no, I mean, I think they're maybe closer to Q1 or very end of Q4. I think that's the most likely time frame that we actually get something approved. And I think to, even that point, even in the XRP ETF getting filed, we were hearing back in July, BlackRock just filed Bitcoin ETF. It's going to be approved imminently. It's like, no, it's been rejected multiple times by multiple different, parties that have filed. So I think the filing at this point shouldn't be the thing that prices or pumps price action and really drives it. I think if anything, it's the actual approval, because otherwise people are just going to keep getting wrecked on filing. Okay, it wasn't accepted. We got 6 months. So people just keep trying to, buy and sell rumor and news. And it doesn't really seem to work out well. But I thought, there were some interesting comments that Brad Garlinghouse made the past few days. For those who are unaware, Brad's the CEO of Ripple Labs, the company behind XRP. But one thing he said that stuck out to me, which is something that I've always kind of preached and thought was very smart, was he advocated against maximalism in crypto and was essentially saying he's bullish about a lot of stuff, but being maximalist doesn't get us anywhere, because for crypto to ultimately succeed, it needs to be a multi-chain system, and use, each chain for its most efficient and proper use case. So I thought that was interesting, because you always get Bitcoin maxis, XRP maxis, and ETH maxis fighting over, price action and who's going up faster. It's like, hey, why don't we all just work together and make the narrative crypto is good rather than crypto is divided within. But the other thing that Garlinghouse commented on, and I think this is something that, anyone who's dabbled in crypto in the US has encountered, was the US is very far behind on creating frameworks and constructs to allow businesses to operate using blockchain and crypto. And he compared it to Dubai, where they have a very robust framework, and it's just a lot easier to transact and build in that industry without getting held back by red tape and red flags. So I thought that was really interesting, especially as we've been seeing, the kind of speculation and headline news about Ripple heating up recently.
Yeah, I think ever since July, everyone's kind of been on the Ripple train. I mean, I understand it's been a lot of people who were screwed over back in, I think it was January of 2021. They finally got to see a bit of a round trip back to some important levels. Actually, it wasn't even a round trip. I think back in the summer, it was even higher for XRP. Just wasn't listed on any of these exchanges available in the US. But yeah, I mean, I think those guys have had a really tough battle for a long time, both him and Stu Alderati. When it came to going up against the SEC, they had a solid case, and obviously they prevailed. And XRP is going to be a huge part, I think, of the ecosystem of crypto in the coming, I'll say, even decades. I think it'll be around for a good amount of time. But yeah, I think their story also, like you said, and what he's also bringing up, is the U.S. is very far behind when it comes to a lot of that. And I think a lot of that is because we don't have regulation in the United States as well. And, I even just looking at what's happened here with XRP and the BlackRock ETF fake news, I mean, that's 100%, that's manipulation in the markets itself, right? Even people who don't even think that they contributed to it. So that's one thing that's really important, I think. And when I see stuff like that happen, and I'll go back to kind of retail. I blame even for this. It's like, how many times are you going to let this happen to you too? right? I'm not saying I'm happy that people got liquidated. I'm not. I think it's absolutely BS that people keep getting liquidated this way, and we keep believing these narratives, and these influencers keep pushing this shit out to the point where it's like, guys, no one believes you. You have not an ounce of credibility left. I can't remember which account it was, but they were like, here, next time you have a question about BlackRock's ETF, if it's real or not, why don't you call BlackRock's what do you call it? Team, their customer service, and see if it's approved, if it's been approved or not, or if that's an actual product that they're going to be offering. It's like, it's not hard to find this information out. I think people are just so excited and they're so ready for, a bull market. It's like, this is the type of sentiment that you absolutely want if you want to dump on people, and this is also the sentiment that you want if you want people to, if you want to distribute to retail, in my opinion. And I think we saw distribution yesterday at a perfect scale because we saw this price shoot up. Imagine if anyone who had XRP up at this level at 74 cents, had some orders ready to sell at that point. Well, they dumped instantly, right? Went right to them. I think it off, and we've been seeing a ton of XRP. That's the other thing that really pisses me off, man. It just hit me. I saw so many XRP transactions go to the exchanges prior to that being announced. And we've seen it all week from Friday to even yesterday prior to the news announcement. Someone obviously probably had some hand in this, and it was market manipulation 100%. I just realized that, man, fucking, that's ridiculous. If we're gonna keep doing this, then you kind of know who's at play here that caused that. Man, that's aggravating. But yeah, it's market manipulation to the highest degree. And I think that they're paying a lot of these news agencies, or these fake people, these people to file fake filings and stuff like that. It's really interesting, but I don't know. I'm just so tired of this space and all the fake fraud and all that shit that I'm numb. I'm numb to any more ETFs. I don't want to hear ETF ever again. I think it's going to get approved, but again, I'm listening to what Gary Gensler said. He doesn't want to see any more Bitcoin price manipulation, and he still wants regulation on Tether. So two things that he said from 2022, early 2022, not even the recent ETF filings. So keep that in mind. That's what I think is their base case for why it keeps getting denied. And it's just ridiculous that we keep seeing these ETFs pop up. Next is Doge, right? But I think that's a good spot to stop with the XRP. Let's look at two things, and we can call it a day. Matic, we were talking about that it was getting close to $1, right? It's pulled back pretty significantly since you and I started talking on the show. We pull up the hourly. Yeah, it was went all the way down to 89 cents this hour, and it went up to about 98 cents earlier today. Matic's been on its hair. I mean, look at this. This has just been nonstop push to the upside. We got what we thought was deviation down here back in October, but since the October lows, we have, I mean, not even October lows, but let's say from, right at the end of October to November, we shot up about 63%, and we're currently sitting at about 52% to current price. Insane gains for Matic. We've seen a lot of these coins just absolutely melt faces. We saw Cardano recently, we saw XRP yesterday, Chainlink, AVAX, all these altcoins have had a pretty good run. And I think it's a lot easier right now because it seems like sentiment's up. There's also a lot of USDT in circulation, which needs to be said, and Bitcoin dominance is down around 52.15. So really interesting to see these alts just take off. I don't buy it one bit. I think that's, if we look at this on the macro, it's a really good move to the upside, but you're still not above where you were back in February of 2023, which was $1.58, right? So if we're looking at this, I mean, I got to zoom out further. What kind of structure this is? This could be an XYZ or XWY, WXYZ, so WXY, and then come down for Z, something like along those lines. But yeah, this is a really interesting structure for Matic. I think a lot of people get excited about it. You actually told me something I didn't know before the show about Matic and optimism, so I'll let you take that away.
Yeah, so something that was really interesting, and after being big on optimism on the show, it kind of makes me feel a little bit warm inside, but bad for Kevin's side of the Matic bet was so the chief, I believe he was the president of Polygon, Ryan Wyatt. He left, I want to say, a month or two ago, and Polygon had some organizational shifts as far as their leadership structure, and it was just broke yesterday that Ryan Wyatt has joined Optimism as the chief growth officer. And this is, significant. I mean, it's a little bit more relevant because even though a lot of people, at least that I'm familiar with, that are, more on the trading scene, and are, more of the ETH maxi type, and again, why you shouldn't be a maxi, Optimism and the OP stack, or Op stack specifically, they're what powers Base. So, Base blew up, Coinbase sponsored or incubated layer two, blew up largely because of FinTech, just really driving volume and TVL to the chain in its early days. But, run by the Op stack, the Base core dev team is the secondary core team to the Op stack. Now you've got Ryan Wyatt, who really pioneered and spurred a lot of the growth at Polygon, coming over as the chief growth officer. So it almost just makes kind of a powerhouse of optimism. They've been gaining a lot of traction. Their DAO has always been one of the more actively participated DAOs as far as, comparing other layer twos. So yeah, I think that was some really interesting stuff to see happen. And I think it could be, just something to pay attention to and watch over the next couple months.
Very interesting. I just pulled this up here. This was Optimism against Matic on the USD chart for Bitcoin on the weekly. It's pretty even chart right there, isn't it? Seems like, I don't know, seems like a lot of this market is moving very similarly to each other. I think that's really interesting too.
Yeah, and I think, the thing with the layer twos right now is we're still in that race to figure out, what's going to be the dominant EVM layer two. Is there going to be a dominant EVM layer two? And is that one of the layer twos that currently exists, right? Because you have a lot of people building side chains either on the Matic SDK or the Polygon SDK. You have people building on the Optimism stack. And then you also have Avalanche, which is technically a layer one that's EVM compatible. And you have a lot of games and other projects going up and building subnets, which are essentially like the equivalent of a layer two on Avalanche, right? So I think it's going to be an interesting time over the next few years. I'll throw in Ronin Network into the conversation as well. Another chain that's being really picky with who builds on them, but is really looking for good partners, specifically within gaming. So yeah, I think it's going to be, interesting to watch which layer two kind of wins or takes the lead. But I think that's also part of the reason where, if you overlapped and looked at a lot of their charts, I think you'd see some similar movements just because no one's really figured out, this is the layer two that's going to go far and fast. Other than Avalanche, because it's not necessarily a layer two, and Avax has just been seeing some wild moves, more comparable to Chainlink, in my opinion.
Yeah, man. I think that, and again, it seems like, especially with sentiment coming back too, that people are going to definitely try and figure out what's that next one in this next bull market. Obviously Optimism is one that I'm looking at mainly because of how much you talk about it, and I'm interested, and I think I'm gonna definitely be invested when I think the time is right. Alts have gone absolutely crazy lately. I don't necessarily feel like buying or dancing or doing any of that stuff for right now, but I do want to pull up one last thing before we head out, and I guess it plays into what we're seeing with alts and Bitcoin shooting up, but we can see that. Oops, why can I not? There we go. This is USDT. My arch enemy, it seems like now they've taken over from Binance, but they are up $203 million today. We're at $87.18 billion market cap. Paulo Arodino was bragging about it on Twitter, the jerk, because compared to the other big stablecoin, USDC, it's been dropping continuously. And once again, we are, well, I guess this is actually the first time we're at this level. Actually, no, we double bottomed here, but we're under $24 billion in total market cap. So from the time that we were at the all-time high to where we are currently, if we look at this on the monthly, we are significantly lower than where we were, right? We're at around $57 billion. We're sitting at under 24. Are people, is anyone noticing this? Does anyone care? Probably not. But when you put this against, the USDT chart, we're seeing exactly what's happening right before our eyes, right? I think people are taking advantage of USDC. They're taking advantage of Circle. They're taking advantage of Coinbase, and they're offloading into US fiat in certain markets or even into Bitcoin. And we're seeing, these stables being printed continuously. You're not seeing USDC being minted. You're seeing USDT being printed like crazy. And again, this is why I remain extremely cautious when I look at this market right now, because Bitcoin's price is still extremely elevated. Yesterday we were talking about this one zone being tapped. I think we are. Let's see. Yeah, right here on the daily, got tapped. Went right below to this level, and we're still within the supply zone range, its distribution range. If we continue to see exchanges receive or send USDT, I wouldn't be surprised if we have one more push up to around that $39,000 to $40,000 level. I think that's very much possible, but just keep an eye on that. Every time this price goes up, USDC goes down. So definitely someone is selling USDT, in my opinion. I don't know if they're 100% backed in terms of their treasuries to their reserves, especially with how much they've printed recently. We saw that Binance moved $4 billion worth of USDT recently from hot wallet to cold wallet. So there's a lot of things that are going on, a lot of fishy things. I don't know if the U.S. government's dragging their feet. They do a good job at that, especially even when Cynthia Loomis is like, yo, DOJ, do something. Things like this can play out for a period of time. So we could see prolonged price action where the market just will not, will not react to it. Again, low volumes, but we've had a great move to the upside from the beginning of the year. There is definitely something going on in the world of crypto. Whether people recognize it sooner or later, I think everyone's just too caught up in the price action and the ETFs right now to realize that they're kind of being defrauded in some capacity by some of the biggest market makers in the space. When that rug is pulled, I don't know if they'll still be happy, but yeah, I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take price action to go down for people to actually get upset about it or to recognize it. When it's in their favor, who cares, right?
No, yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. I think right now, I was looking at the fear and greed chart yesterday. Number was somewhere between 70 and 73, and I think that was right on the money. I mean, I hate to be the person who says be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful, but no, I mean, it seems like coming off of a few decent airdrops, and some rallying, there seems to be a lot of people who are jealous that others got a slight bag in the middle of what seemed to be either in the middle of the bear, the end of the bear, and some price action on a few different tokens and a few other things. So people are like, hey, give me my share of the money, let me load up on some ETH, look for that next big flip. And I don't think it's going to end well. Already starting to see some pullbacks, so we'll see what happens. But no, I mean, I'm definitely sharing a lot of the sentiment that you are right now with the market.
This market will drive you insane. It's been driving me crazy lately. I think it's just, I think there's a lot of things in the world that are going on that we're just choosing not to ignore. I mean, choosing not to, pay attention to in the markets. And no one ever said that the markets are rational. I will say this though, the markets are open. The S&P just put in another gap right there, massive gap to the upside. If we look at the NASDAQ, once again, another massive gap there. And if we looked at the Dow, a pretty good gap to the upside. I'm really interested in seeing how this closes today because I do think that there's a chance we could see a bit of a retracement on the daily, maybe fill out these two gaps, I would say is likely. I don't think it'll go much lower than that if the sentiment remains extremely bullish. But I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Just keep an eye on the markets, gauge your risk. I still think that having a long-term, outlook is probably going to be your best bet. I think everything is, going to see negative price action at some point. But I think if we continue to push up here, that could be one of the biggest rug pulls in TradFi history, or at least in the past 15 years before we see, any price volatility or movement to the downside. And I do think that we are in the middle of a bubble. Let's put it that way, right? 7 stocks rolling up the stock market right now. We're expecting Santa to save us in this rally at the end of the year. I think we're just looking for reasons to be bullish, but I think that the global macro environment will give us answers soon enough. That leaves everything I have to say today. House, any final thoughts?
No, I think you said it well. I think people are just dying for a reason to be bullish, but nah, I think that was good.
Sweet. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm probably trying to take a nap before I have to go to this doctor's appointment today. So, guys, we'll be back tomorrow, regular time, 3 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can tell I haven't slept at all. Um, Once again, we are not financial advisors. Nothing we say is financial advice. Do your own research before you make any financial uh, decisions, I guess. Consult with your advisor. We're just a couple of guys that like talking the markets and being bearish. We will see you guys tomorrow. Hope you all have a great day and take care.